starts with mindset. It's about 95% a mindset, and then the remaining 5 is the actual mechanics. For lack of better words, I brainwashed myself. I was swimming in the Kool-Aid of self-improvement. I had a lot of garbage that I grew up with, and also limiting beliefs that were in my mind. I had to actually remove all that and then reprogram my mind to be more of a growth type mindset.
Welcome, everyone, to the Road Less Traveled show. This is a show about people that were successful in a previous career and left that career to go down a different path. I'm your co-host, Richard Coyne.
And I'm your co-host, Bill Zahller.
On today's show, we have Sterling White. Sterling, we're so glad you joined us.
Yes. Welcome, everyone, to the show. Get your popcorn ready. Go ahead and take a seat. You may have a recliner or an office chair, whichever. We're going to take you along for a journey.
Excellent, Sterling. Well, thank you so much for being on the Road Less Traveled show. To start with, can we just can you tell us a little bit about your background, what you initially started in, and then what you've transitioned to?
Yeah, so I'll give everyone the Cliff Note version. So born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana, the parts of the city where when you would drive through, you would want to avoid those areas, or if you had to go through, you would roll your windows up and then lock your doors. And a single mother, fraternal twin brother. Some people says he's as dark as Wesley Snipes. I don't think he's that dark, but and you just never knew in that environment if you would make it to the next day. And I remember, Bill, there was one point where I was 5 years old. My brother's sitting right across from me, and we're eating cut up hot dogs and ramen noodles, something along those lines. And as soon as we go upstairs, a bullet comes right through the back patio where we were sitting. So statistically, I actually shouldn't be sitting in this chair and actually sharing that story with you. And fast forward, I had to figure out a way to earn money. And this was in my elementary days. So that's how I really got the entrepreneur spirit, where I started selling Kool-Aid, then Pokemon cards, and anything I can get my hands on legally, because there was a ton of illegal activity. Fast forward from there, got started in real estate on the construction side as a laborer. And I read the book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Everyone's very familiar with that one. And then I saw that, or from reading, that rich and wealthy people did not get that way by being laborers. They were actually investors. So from there, I started buying single families, where I bought my very first deal, no money out of pocket. I actually found a mentor and partnered with them, bought 150 single families, and then in 2017 shifted to multifamily and got up to about 500 units. So that's the compacted 10 years in about, what is that, 1 minute?
That's great. You said 150 single family you bought and purchased?
Yeah, that's why I don't have very much hair due
That's
to
right.
that. It was a lot, quite a bit to do.
Yeah, that's a lot of transaction, a lot of roofs, a lot of individual things. Yeah. Well, that's great.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sterling, actually, it's amazing. You know, we talk about this all the time. The reticular activating system. When you see something that you weren't aware of before, and now all of a sudden you focus in on it, you're like, oh my gosh, they're all over the place. And what I mean by that is twins. You have a twin brother. Well, Bill has girl twins, and I have boy-girl twins.
Wow, there we go. What such a small world. Yeah,
it's crazy. It's crazy. So,
are they identical, fraternal?
Fraternal. How about yours, Richard?
Yeah. My boy-girl twins are fraternal. Yes.
Okay, yeah, you said boy girl, but can they still? I think it's not so much, and correct me if I'm wrong, identical on what they look like. It has something to do with the egg or something, or how they're.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Go ahead.
If the egg splits, then it can be, then that's considered fraternal. However, even if the egg splits, sometimes there are two different amniotic sacs. But in the case of boy girls, you know, that meant that 2 eggs were fertilized, and they of course each had their own amniotic sac, and therefore, you know, are two, you know, completely different people that, you know, happen to have, you know, just the same birthday kind of thing. So,
got it. Well, learn something new every day. There we go.
Yeah. Now that we've covered genetics and biology, let's move on.
Exactly.
On the entrepreneurial show. Yeah.
Let's move on to our next topic. So Sterling, as you look back, you know, again, I applaud you for your, you had a hard beginning, and, you know, bless your mother for, you know, taking care of you and your brother and keeping you guys, you know, moving in a good direction. And you know, certainly that's glad to hear that everything is moved well for you. But again, that's excellent to hear that you were working, providing, all of a sudden you expose yourself to a new concept, and then boom, it blew your mind, and you obviously took the initiative to move in a direction of shifting from being the person working for money, trading time for money, hourly, kind of thing, into being a real estate investor. So, maybe back to your early days for a moment. Is there a funny story you can share, something that made you scratch your head, say, why am I doing this?
So there was one point in time where this was when I was a laborer, that my friend's dad owned the construction company, and he was so cheap that what you're supposed to do is, when you're high on these scaffolds, you're supposed to use boards on the outside. So in case someone doesn't fall over, he was cheap, so he just didn't have enough boards. So I would say every morning when I would get up on that thing, I'm already petrified of heights. That is the biggest fear that I have, but I always like to do things that are outside of my comfort zone. But I would say that was just one thing for me, and the way I conquered that at that time, which I wouldn't recommend it, and I actually don't, is I would sip a little of alcohol beforehand, which I wouldn't do enough, but that would help me be able to conquer that fear. I don't drink at all anymore, but that's just one funny story that I know, looking back, that it was dangerous, me working on that job. That's all.
A little liquid courage. Yeah, I'll tell you what, we had to do some work in my house, a couple of years back, and we stacked 4 levels of scaffolding up on top, and then we had 3 on the sides. So it was very strong and sturdy, but nevertheless, I did not like being up on that top level, not at all. Yeah,
it's not my thing. Definitely, I give kudos to the construction workers, and every time I'm out, I remember at one point I was traveling overseas, and I don't know how tall the building was, maybe 70 or 80 floors. And you've got the guys that are painting on the side of the building, and they're, rappelling down. I'm just like, you could not pay me enough to do that.
No.
Right.
No. No, agree.
Absolutely. I mean, there's something about, the ladders, and like you said, just hanging off the side of a building. I don't mind flying at 40,000 feet, but I wouldn't want to be on a 30-foot ladder on some building. Yeah, it's just totally different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Sterling, what was a kind of deciding factor to get you to change the road run? You mentioned you'd read Rich Dad Poor Dad. It was like a mental shift for you. So after you read that, did you develop a plan? Did you instantly start looking for things, or how did that kind of formulate to get out of the labor division into the entrepreneurial side?
So this is another pivotal moment. I had quite a bit of pivotal moments in my early 20s, but this was one that really hit home. Was I was at a college party right around that time. I was in construction and in real estate, and this is where I ended up drifting away from the crowd. And I was out in the middle of this boat or canoe or whatever it was, and everyone's still at the boathouse enjoying themselves, having a good time, and I'm just there in the middle of everything. And there's this question that comes down to me. It's just me out there that asks me, Sterling, is this what you want to do with your life? And that's when I was still going down the rat race of exchanging time for money. And I answered back to that and I was just drifting into average land as well. I answered back to the question, no. And then I did 3 key things after that. And the first one was I cut off all my friends because they were not going where I wanted to go. Great people. Secondly, is I cut out the news, which is nothing but negativity. And then third was I ended up starting on more self-improvement, listening to the Earl Nightingales, the Jim Rohns, the W. Clement Stones, the Napoleon Hills. And that's what really changed, and really the light bulb and the shift helped me take a different path in life, and more so the road less traveled.
That's great.
Nice.
Yeah.
I had to layer that part in there with the road less travel for you guys.
We love that plug.
That's perfect.
It's like in movies when they say the title in the actual the movie. It's like, yes, perfect.
That's right.
I always mess it up, and thought I'd pull out my little Jim Rohn quote book to see if I could actually find it here and actually get it correctly. But the bottom line is that it's the summary, or the quick note of the quote is something along the lines of, people will rarely rise to a level above where they are unless they self-improve. And again, I butchered it, but the point is that having those 3 mindset shifts, like questions and answers that you gave yourself, that made all the difference. And that really set you on a whole new path. And, it is that go back to your friends. And again, again, like you said, nice people, good people, but at the same point in time, if they're not challenging you and elevating you, well, then you're in average land.
Yep. And it could be crabs in the barrel. And that's what I had experienced too, is that as I started to change, they started to view me different. It was a very weird dynamic. And I remember going back to them, and it was very weird. I could tell that I was different and they were the same, or it was just some different energy when it came to that. But it's just, imagine you're going to a conference and your friend is saying, no, let's go ahead and go out this weekend. Or what are you doing going to that conference? The only person that is the person who's putting it on is going to be the person that makes money, but they don't see it because they're in a different path. But my question for you, Richard, is that, do you believe everyone has that type of question asked to them, and then it's the people that actually figure out, or some type of moment such as that, and the people who actually make something of themselves actually listen to that voice? I'm just curious.
Honestly, I hadn't thought about it, but I do think you're right. I do think that in our lives, we have those pivotal moments all the time that are, well, not all the time, but frequently, where essentially you kind of have to stop and self-critique yourself and look and analyze and figure out, wait a minute, am I on the right path, or do I need to do something different? And I do think that a lot of people ignore that question. And frankly, I probably ignored that question a number of times earlier in my adult life, raising kids, just busy with kids, busy with the job. And there probably were some opportunities that I missed that, by maybe just being too consumed and two heads down rather than looking forward and looking beyond where I want to figure out where I wanted to be. So yeah, great question. And I do think that, some self-reflection along the way is good for the soul. And it really helps you kind of, oh, wait, something's been in the back of my mind nagging at me. I got to really kind of think about that for a few minutes. Wait a minute. Oh, wow. I really do have a choice here, So yeah, great point, Sterling. Yeah.
I forget who said it too. It was something like, to get better results, you need to ask better questions. Like you said, versus just, what do I want to do, this weekend, like your friends, that they're in a short-term vision where you have much longer term, if I go to this, it's going to change my trajectory that I can build on that and have a different path, a month, a year down the road, 5 years down the road is going to be different than the person only looks toward this weekend. What's my, it's all back to, the Roman days, bread and circuses, right? They just fed and entertained, and that was it. And that kept the masses happy. But the people that rise above that have a different calling and a different, I think a different hunger for it. And one thing I'm sure you realize or recognize too, or notice as you become more, I guess, in the circles with more entrepreneurial friends, more people doing, it's not that they're, earning a higher income. I think the interesting part about it is they're all doing interesting things. You have interesting things to talk about. There's all some project, there's new thing. So it just keeps your mind, flowing with ideas and possibilities and way you start looking at things. And like we talked about earlier, the reticular activating system, you start noticing the opportunities because you have that in discussion with your new peer group, right?
Yeah. And it's also the way of think that is, and I have difficulty, and this is one of the things I'll be transparent with, is just relating to, and I wouldn't say average people. I would say just like my mother, for instance, is I couldn't say or have conversation, or just friends in general, is I've had to be around people who are a certain caliber because I'm just have difficulties relating to anyone else, because the things that I talk about, and me talking about philosophy, there's not many people that study stoicism, but when I around other people, is they may not practice stoicism, but they are asking bigger questions that could lead to some or studying some other form of philosophy. So that's another thing as well. It's just to think.
We mentioned a couple of times too. I forget which book, I have to look it up again, but they had a theme, an overall theme in there, which I thought was interesting. They said, poor people talk about people, right? I mean, it's the gossip. Middle class talk about possessions and things, the new boat, the new car, whatever. And the wealthy talk about ideas. So again, it's just kind of the different levels of what consumes your focus. And that's what, the more you focus on, the more you're driven to that. So I think it was an interesting comparison on that, or analogy.
Yeah, that's a great point on that. I mean, we can go down rabbit holes when it comes to that,
Right.
but yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sure. So Sterling, as you were really shifting from being a laborer, working, trading your time, and started moving toward real estate, you mentioned you did a bunch of house flips and whatnot. Early days, were there some obstacles you had to overcome to kind of really get that moving, that engine going?
Yeah, first is I didn't have any credit, or I mean, that's what most people use, is that when you would pull my credit score, nothing wouldn't even come up. I don't even know if that's worse than having a low credit score. But I remember going, I think it was for a phone or something. They pulled it and they said, yeah, there's nothing there. I was like, what do you mean there's nothing there? So there was that. And then also is I didn't have any money. And this was
Mm-hmm.
around, I was 23 years old, or late 22. And so I had negative funds in my bank account. But this is what I really got from the self-improvement and all that, is just being a problem solver and having the more growth mindset versus victim mindset. Because easily through one, I could have used my upbringing as a crutch and an excuse. So that's one, but also is I could have used that, hey, just getting started and I don't have any cash. I could have used that as an excuse, but I decided, hey, I'm at point A, I want to get to Z. How do I bridge the gap? And I want to go back to the victim mindset mentality, because this is also what I've learned so much from other people. And this is a story by Earl Nightingale. He talks about there's two brothers. One is quote unquote successful, and the other is jail ridden, and he took a different path in life that wasn't so good. And they asked them both, is what motivated you to get to where you are? And they said it was our father, which their father was also drunken and just didn't have the best outcome. So it's so different how someone can take the same exact situation and view it differently and be able to use that as motivation.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Mindset is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Right. One viewed it as, he just kind of defaulted to what his father did. And that was just the path he knew. And the other repulsed him so much. He went, 180 degrees and made sure he was never on that path. But right. Yeah.
Exactly.
The same focal point, just different views of it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Sterling, what was like the first victory you can think of as you transitioned into the entrepreneurial part? Is there something you look back to that happened? You're like, yes, this is definitely the right choice. I've made a good decision here, and I can do this.
I would say is when I started an Amazon business. So this wasn't even in the real estate sector. This was where I was just needing to, I was wanted some additional income coming in, and I didn't want to exchange time for money, which in a way that was still exchanging time for money, but it wasn't direct, as I had my own schedule. I would say my first win was, and this was when the whole Frozen was huge with Elsa and then Anna, Olaf. I remember I created a product, and from that is I did a great job in taking pictures of. So I really started to understand marketing, came up with a description, and then also finding a product that was product market fit. So that I would say was my first big win, where I was able to buy something at a relatively low cost and then be able to have a really good markup. But the big thing that I experienced from that is that people wanted to save time. They didn't want to go out there and put all those items together. And so that's what I would say was the big win. I remember I put a bunch of those products together, and I think it was a coloring book, some crayons, and then one other thing. And then I put a bunch of those together, and then I sent them in to Amazon. And then Amazon, whenever someone would place an order, Amazon would then ship it to the end user, the customer, and then I would get a cut of that. So that was the big light bulb, and for me, and big win.
Right. Nice.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay.
Very
So you're a big Olaf fan, huh? Even to this day, huh?
How could you not
I would
be?
say more Elsa and Anna.
Okay. There you go. They're much better singers than
That's right.
than Olaf is.
I didn't get around to watching the movie, so yeah, I dropped the ball on that one.
Okay, gotcha. All right, very cool. So, Sterling, more recently, is there perhaps it's as you shifted over to multifamily, maybe toward the end of your fix and flip days, is there a funny story you can share, something that you experienced along the way?
So I would say is I did several fix and flips starting out, but primarily was just buy and hold. So those 150 were buy and hold.
Nice.
Funny story. Oh, here we go. So one story is, and this was when my the partnership I have with Jacob when we first started, is what he does is he had a map of all the areas in Indianapolis to not invest in, which he would call the red zones, which were just high crime, high volatility, all that. And then he had it already mapped out, and he told me, hey, these are going to be the areas that we avoid, and these are going to be the areas that we invested. And this was probably our second or third time actually meeting at that time. So we weren't actually partners. We were working together, but this was before we started our company. And I said, hey, those red areas are actually where all I grew up in. So that's the story we go back to. And how I originally met him was we were at a networking event. And for some reason, he went upstairs, went on the stage, told his story. And I said, I got to work with this guy. And then I was so aggressive, I followed him into the bathroom. And I said, hey, I started saying, hey, we got to exchange, would enjoy working with you. So that's how that initial partnership ended up coming together.
Nice. That's great. Very cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, persistence. And actually, the funny thing also in a way is that actually that Bill didn't follow me into the bathroom. But anyway, we met at a RIA meeting. Again, it was actually literally, we had both literally just joined the local RIA for us, and we met at our first meeting. We didn't realize we would be future business partners, but a little ways down the road after knowing each other for a bit, we spent more time together and realized we had similar goals, objectives, initiatives, values, and where we wanted to go. And boom, there you go. So very cool.
How did that first interaction go? Did you see that, I may potentially work with this individual, or it was more just a short conversation? How was that?
Richard was just in awe when he met me. So
there it was. He took a selfie, put it on Instagram and everything.
Real paparazzi problem for a while, but after I rescinded the restraining order, we found out we could work together.
Back to your question earlier, your sort of comment earlier about sort of like those points in your life. That's happened to me a number of times. And I'll give you two examples. Number one, I literally was just starting grad school to work at my MBA. And our very first meeting, I was on a full fellowship, which meant I got paid to go to school. And I did research for 10 hours for one professor a week, 10 hours for another professor a week. And there were other people in my group. And literally, I instantly looked over across the room and said, I am going to be friends with that guy.
Got it.
So in a way, same thing. Bill and I walked out of the restaurant together and we started talking. I'm like, okay, I didn't know partnership was in the future, but I just realized that, okay, that's the kind of person I want to connect with. I want to be associated with. So yeah, you have that kind of, to me, it's like that, light bulb lights on, at those points in your life, some points in your life. So yeah.
Was this after or before you took the selfie?
It wasn't just one selfie.
No, it was multiple. Hey, everybody, we got
stalker.
3 batteries later. But anyhow. Yeah. No, but I mean, like you said, when you meet somebody like that, an initial one, like you're saying, it's putting yourself out there, right? You're going to networking events. Yep. It's not people are going to knock on your door and Sam Zell come up and say, hey, you'd like to partner with me? I don't know. So you're going to have to, like you said, put yourself out there. But then again, as you talk to people and meet people, it doesn't take me as long to, I guess, necessarily figure out if you guys have similar goals and work ethics and, just kind of, you have to be kind of aligned in that direction, right? You can't have totally different views of the world and how you want to proceed with work. And I think have a successful partnership. So I think there's a pretty high filter on that to begin with, and then dig down personality, compatibility, and all that.
Yeah, and that's a great point that you mentioned, is putting yourself out there. That's where it does start. And I know there's some people that have difficulty with that, which me, I'm more of a social butterfly, for lack of better words. I could go out there and start a conversation with pretty much anyone. Jacob, on the other hand, is when we would go to a networking event, it's like, hey, Sterling, go out there. You can do that. So that's also the key to partnerships, is if you are at one of these networking events, that could be you find that person that is that social butterfly and partner with them. That way they can fulfill that gap that may be in your business. So that's another thing that comes to mind too. Or you just have to figure out a way to overcome it. Go to Toastmasters, something along those lines to work on your speaking and confidence in that area.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, again, go back to those moments in your life. I mean, there was one point where, I felt like I was in 8th or 9th grade or whatever it was. And I went out for my English class. We were studying the Shakespeare thing, and we were going to do a couple acts of Shakespeare on stage for the whole school and it was way out of my comfort zone. But I'm like, I'm going for it. I want to roll. Something just came up in me that's I'm breaking my pattern of maybe not being as outgoing, and I'm going to do this. And I did. It was awesome. So
there you go. Yeah. The worst would have been if you didn't go through with that, and then you likely would have been looking back and regretting. And I had those moments, and I believe they say that in the nursing home, when people are about to die or pass over, they ask them questions about their life, is they mostly talk about the things that they regret versus the things that they had accomplished, depending on the person. But that's more so they talk about regrets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sterling, where are you today on your journey?
So one is I'm no longer in Indianapolis, Indiana. So I was there for 30 years and then moved here, which I'm 31 years old. So some people may think, well, how old is he? But moved here to Houston, Texas. I've got to say in my Southern accent. And they say everything's bigger here in Texas, except the toilet that I have is the same size as the ones back home. So that's the only disappointing thing that I've experienced. I think it's just a defective toilet. So I just have to get exchanged out.
Probably imports from out of state. Yeah.
And on the side of real estate, have been actually selling over the years. It's been a great time to sell, and believe the market's going to start to shift more so. So want to have that dry powder ready. And then on a personal level, studying quite a bit of philosophy and just understanding more of how the world works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Great.
Okay, nice. Yeah. Sterling, as you, maybe it's through your company, maybe it's personally, is there something that you do to give back that you can share with the audience?
I'd say one is being a part of Big Brothers, Big Sisters, which I need to find another little brother, but that's someone from the environment that is actually currently in the environment and similar upbringing to I have. And what I do is I mentor them, and usually they could be as young as 5 years old all the way up to, I would say, about 15, 16 years old. So that's one way. And then but I do need to do more of figuring out ways to do that. Just haven't carved it out just yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's certainly a worthy cause. And again, a lot of people do need some kind of mentor and early shaping and mentoring, is what helps people, go on a better path than often not, which is, it makes a world of difference. So very nice that you do that. Yeah.
It's huge. And for myself is I didn't have that growing up. Is I had my mother that did the best with what she had, but what she had got her up until that point, and it was living on welfare, Section 8 housing, all that, which is not a knock on my mother, but luckily I ended up finding a way out of that environment, and just through, I don't know if it was the universe or what it was that said, okay, well, go ahead and shift to this course and take more so the road less traveled from my family, which is the common path. I took a completely different path than many people in my family, and through that, I don't know what it was that pulled me out of that, but that ended up changing really the trajectory of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Was there something as you continue to scale here, Sterling, and grow your business, is there something you've recently implemented that's helped you achieve that?
I'd say it's being more systems and process driven. That's been the big the skill I've really implemented more of, because I used to be such an action taker, and if there's a wall in front of me, Bill, I'm similar to the juggernaut, where I've got my helmet on and I would see that wall and I would keep running into it until I ultimately break through it. But there's all this debris that's behind me that needs to be cleaned up. I may be a little bit bloody, but now I've taken time more so to take a step back and, okay, think more, and then also build the right processes and systems to where maybe I can build a ladder. Okay, maybe I can go around this wall. So that's what I would say I'm being more skilled at.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. I mean, as you scale, you have to have systems and processes, right? I mean, everybody has that tendency, I guess, as an entrepreneur, you want to get your, hands in everything, and even to in the beginning to learn the business, what needs to be done. But at some point you have to step back and let the process take over so it can be much more efficient and better use of your time, right? I mean, there's only so much of your time you as an entrepreneur, so you need to spend that in the growing your business versus the the day-to-day things that you can systematize.
Yeah. And one thing I quickly ended up learning is that by not having the right systems and processes, yes, when you're bringing on people, it's more difficult to scale because everything's pretty much in your head. And then also and this was one thing when I really lacked self-awareness, is that expecting someone to accomplish what you want them to expect, but you don't really have the expectations because you don't have a systems and process built out. That caused a lot of frustration for me. So that's one thing looking back, that, hey, you got to have everything in place and say, okay, if you follow this system, this process in place, this is going to be the outcome. This didn't have any of that at the time, and really just solely relied on that person to accomplish that. Yes, when you have more so A players, that's good from that. But starting out is you may have to hire C players because you may not have the capital, and you may have to build up in order to get to the B to the A players.
Right. Yep. Right. Sterling, what advice would you give somebody who's considering making a path change?
Man, I'd say is the mind. It starts with mindset. That was the key thing that really, because I'm a firm believer, it's about 95% mindset, and then the remaining 5 is the actual mechanics. That's just my personal opinion. So that's what really helped propel me. And for lack of better words, I brainwashed myself. I was swimming in the Kool-Aid of self-improvement and the early person that I came across, and I still listen to him to this day, is Earl Nightingale. He really helped that, because I had a lot of garbage that I grew up with, and also limiting beliefs that were in my mind, that I had to actually remove all that and then reprogram my mind to be more of a growth type mindset. So that's where I would say it starts with. And because I see the many people that ask me for advice or insights, they want to get started in real estate, or let's say they want to grow further, but I look at it as a thermostat. So if your mindset is only at 60, 65 degrees, and in order to get to your next goal, you need to be at 70, 75, is every time you get to that 60, 65, you'll figure out a way to cool yourself down or self-sabotage yourself just because of your beliefs. Right.
Yep. Right.
Yeah. I heard that analogy before, and it makes sense, because you see a lot, there's so many examples of it, from lotto winners that, they don't have that mindset. And as quickly as it comes, it goes away because they don't feel like they deserve it, right? The self-sabotage and it just, that's I think a very good point on that. Well, Sterling, what's the best way for somebody to reach out and learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah. So one is sterlingwhiteofficial.com. That is sterlingwhiteofficial.com. And then also you can find me on YouTube. Just type in Sterling White, look for a bald, handsome guy, and I'll come right on up. And I push quite a bit of content out there. So that's a way to connect with me as well.
That's excellent. We'll add that in the show notes below. Well, we really appreciate your time today, Sterling, and being on the show, and enjoyed our conversation, and we wish you continued success.
Yeah, appreciate it. And likewise to you as well. And I trust everyone was able to get a value from this episode.
Absolutely. I'm sure folks are. And Sterling, really want to thank you for being on. We'd also like to thank our listeners. Please continue to give us a 5-star rating so we can bring you more great content like Sterling White on our show today. We'd also like to thank Park Capital Partners that sponsors the show, and remind everybody about 2 important initiatives that Park Capital Partners has going. First of all, we have the Park Capital Value Add Fund, which is a 506c fund open today and available for accredited investors to be part of real estate investing, apartment buildings, et cetera. And we also have the Park Capital Partners Foundation, which is a 501(c) nonprofit that we created. And I'll mention briefly how that works. So first, all the money donated to that foundation goes to do its best work. And that is because Bill and I, through Park Capital Partners, fund the foundation. We also give personally. We also give through our company to the foundation. And then finally, when investors invest with us, we make a donation to honor that investor to a list of 15 pre-selected charities. And that way investors can, not only earn returns on their capital, but also feel good about doing it along the way by having the ability to give a little bit back. So thank you everybody for joining. Reach out to say hello. Bill and I, we're happy to chat with anybody anytime. And we really want to thank you for joining. And remember, folks, the road less traveled may be calling you. We recommend that you listen and take action. Thanks for joining.